My daughter is painting me as a monster during the divorce to help her mom and her rich stepdad. But the real monster was her stepdad, and I can't do anything about it because of the restraining order. I'm 45 years old and not exactly a frequent user of this platform, but while browsing I ended up reading some stories on here and decided to create an account. It's not the most original username in the world, but it gives me a bit of anonymity. I need to explain everything that has happened over the past few months, so don't expect this to be short. I'm not exactly an expert at summarizing these things. But enough introduction. I know I have to give you the context, so here it is. I was married to my wife Selena, 43, for 23 years. We have 2 kids, our daughter Deborah, 21, and our son Milo, 14. I worked hard as a construction manager to support my family, while Selena worked part-time as a receptionist at a local clinic. Money was tight, but we managed to give our kids a good life. A sacrifice here, and one day, things would improve there. It's what everyone does when they're not rich. The turning point came about a year ago. Selena started showing all the signs you'd expect from someone cheating. It was like a Christmas tree with all its colorful lights. But every time I confronted her, she brushed it off. She told me I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, and not to turn into a controlling husband. Then Deborah came along to set things straight. One day, she came to me, clearly upset, and said she'd seen her mom having lunch with a man she didn't recognize. It might have been a colleague, but I already knew that, at best, wasn't the case. Selena wasn't just having lunch with this guy. She was having an affair with him. The man in question was Robert, 50, a wealthy real estate developer who had recently moved to our town. He was well known for throwing lavish parties and flaunting his wealth. Apparently, Selena had been attending those parties behind my back for months. We argued about it. She didn't deny it and told me she wanted a divorce and that she was in love with Robert. Just like that, 23 years thrown away. Up until that point, my story was just like any other, where a woman cheats and leaves her husband for another man. I had already accepted it. She wanted to be with a man with money, and I didn't want to be with a woman driven by interest. The solution seemed simple. Grant the divorce and put an end to it. But the real problem in my story came later. The cheating itself was an issue, but I convinced myself it wasn't a deal breaker and tried to move on. The problem was that Deborah, the very same person who exposed the affair, took her mother's side. I thought she would be on my side, especially since she was so upset to find out what her mom had done. But money can be very persuasive, and it ended up delivering me to the lions. She told me that I'd always been a failure, that the life we had was pretty mediocre, and that it was my fault for not aiming higher. It was my own daughter, not some stranger on the internet, so it hurt more than I can explain. The divorce process was brutal. Selena, backed by Robert's money, crushed me in court. They painted me as emotionally abusive, controlling, and neglectful. It was as if they were describing someone else entirely. To make matters worse, Deborah testified against me. In court, she said that I had anger issues, that I was harsh and cruel toward both her and her mom, and even that I had threatened them. Every single word was a lie. But Deborah was convincing. She had always been articulate and self-assured, and the judge believed her. I couldn't prove otherwise. The court awarded almost everything to Selena. The house, most of our savings, and, worst of all, full custody of Milo. In the end, I not only lost my marriage and my home, but also my relationship with my kids. Milo didn't want to leave. He told the judge he wanted to stay with me, but since he was still a minor, his voice didn't carry much weight. I got visitation rights, but it wasn't enough. With my lawyer, we tried to get paternity tests for both kids as a legal strategy. But since they were both mine, we couldn't prove that my wife had been cheating on me all along. The recent affair didn't count much with the judge because, in his eyes, I was the monster, and my wife had only found refuge in another man for safety. As if that wasn't enough, Deborah took it a step further and filed a restraining order against me, claiming she was afraid for her safety. I hadn't even seen her since that court hearing, but now I couldn't contact her at all, even if I wanted to. The court's decision made it official. I was completely cut off from her life. 3 months ago, I started trying to pick up the pieces of my shattered life, but it's been hard. If it had been my wife, I think I wouldn't have cared as much, but my kids, especially Milo, have really torn me apart. I moved into a small apartment and made work the center of my life. The only positive was that my financial situation was improving. I had saved up a fair amount of money, and since I was juggling several projects at once, I was earning more. For a while, I tried to keep my distance. I thought maybe time would heal things, and maybe Deborah would eventually see the truth. But time passed and nothing changed. Selena moved in with Robert, and Deborah followed her. They're in that big house, living the life Selena always wanted. From the outside, it looked like they had it all: wealth, comfort, and status. The restraining order prevented me from contacting Deborah to try and get her to change what she said. But I couldn't risk violating the court order, because that might cost me full custody of Milo. It didn't take long before things got worse. Milo started calling me secretly from Selena's house, telling me how much he hated living with Robert, how controlling he was, and how miserable everything had become. He said that Robert had absolute control over their lives, monitoring their phone calls and conversations. It sounded exactly like the accusations Deborah had made against me, but this time it was real. Last week, something completely unexpected happened. I received a series of frantic text messages from Deborah. I didn't know what to do, because I was supposed to stay away from her because of the restraining order. In her texts, Deborah detailed how Robert had become verbally abusive with both her and Selena. He controlled their spending, criticized everything they did, and exploded in anger if they didn't follow his rules. He kept a constant check on where they went, who they talked to, and what they did with their time. Deborah said that Robert would scold Selena in front of her, call her names, and treat her like property. He criticized her appearance and even commented on her career choices. In the end, the man I was replaced by turned out to be a nightmare. I was the first one to notice the irony in all of this. Everything Deborah had falsely accused me of doing, Robert was actually doing. And now, she was asking me for help. She said she didn't know what to do and was desperate to get out of the situation, but because of the restraining order, she couldn't even ask me directly. At this point, my only doubt regarding Deborah is whether I'll be a bad father if I let her sleep in the bed she helped make. Now she's living out the same things she accused me of doing. A valuable lesson, I guess. My biggest problem now is Milo, who remains trapped in that house and worries me every day. I could use Deborah's help with that, but because of the restraining order, I don't want to risk anything. As I said, I don't want to make things any worse and have Milo completely trapped there. I don't know if the text messages will amount to anything. I also understand that by helping Milo, I'd be indirectly helping Deborah, and she doesn't deserve any of that. But I'm not about to punish my son just because my daughter and ex-wife tried to ruin my life. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe. New stories every day. Update 1. I don't think even the stories that brought me here had as many comments as mine, which is reassuring. I can't even begin to thank everyone for all this support. Sure, not all of the comments are positive or agree with me, but I appreciate them nonetheless. For example, some people say I should help Deborah no matter what because she's my daughter and I should rescue her from that monster, even though she painted me as one. At the end of the day, she's my daughter, and a father should be able to forgive at least once. It's not something I agree with, but I want to show that I've read every comment. Milo has been in touch again. He's been calling me secretly to avoid Robert's suspicions. According to what he's been telling me, things with Robert have gotten worse. The controlling behavior that Deborah mentioned in her messages has escalated. Deborah and Selena aren't allowed to leave the house without telling Robert where they're going and when they'll be back, and only if Robert approves. My son described Robert as someone who's become obsessed with controlling every aspect of their lives. He's heard Robert yelling at Selena over minor things, like being 5 minutes late. He also told me that his sister, who once thought Robert was the best choice, is now terrified of him. According to Milo, she spends most of her time in her room, avoiding any interaction with Robert so as not to trigger his anger. Selena now seems completely broken because she can't afford the luxury of standing up to him anymore. She's stopped trying and just obeys every single demand. I still find it hard to care about what's happening, but I am very worried about Milo. He said that for now, Robert isn't as harsh with him, but I'm not sure if that's really true or if he's just a kid who doesn't want to talk about what's happening with his dad. I immediately contacted my lawyer to discuss the situation following my last post, and he agreed that I should proceed cautiously. He advised me to document everything Deborah had told me and to file a police report, making it clear that I was doing it out of concern for her safety, not out of any resentment or desire for revenge. He also suggested we ask the court to lift the restraining order, given the new circumstances. Following his advice, I went to the police and filed the report, explaining Robert's behavior as described by Deborah and Milo. Milo even sent me audio messages to support the report, while for Deborah I only used her texts. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but he warned me that unless Deborah or Selena came forward on their own, there wasn't much they could do. I know that the judicial system has its limitations, but it doesn't stop me from feeling frustrated about it. Meanwhile, my lawyer has filed a petition to have the restraining order lifted. We're still waiting for a response from the court, but I'm hopeful that the judge will see the gravity of the situation and lift the order, at least temporarily. Throughout all of this, I've kept in contact with Milo. He's been the only stable connection I have, because even my lawyer told me not to break the restraining order. He's just a kid, stuck in the middle of all this chaos. I assured Milo that I'm doing everything within the bounds of the law to help them. I also made it clear that if he ever feels he or anyone else is in imminent danger, he should call emergency services right away. I even suggested that he try to secretly save some money and keep a few essentials on hand in case he needs to leave quickly. He's been incredibly brave through it all, but I know he's carrying far too much weight on his young shoulders. I'll update everyone when there are new developments, but for now, I just want to thank you all again for your advice and support. It's been a tough few months, but at least now I'm not alone. Maybe I should have written my story a long time ago. Update 2. Before I get into this update, I want to address the idea that if I truly believed my son was in danger, I should just go to the house and take him. It's not like I haven't thought about it. I felt utterly helpless here, unable to do anything. But doing that would only have given the courts a reason to take my son away from me and hand him over to Robert. And on top of that, that person would then know I did it, and he'd use Milo against me for revenge. Up until now, Milo had been safe, and I've always tried to handle this strategically so that Milo would suffer as little as possible. I know Selena and Deborah are hurting too, but they're adults who chose this path. It's not as if they couldn't leave and file a report. This introduction is important for the update, so I wanted to clarify since I didn't do so before. I wish I had better news, but I hope this is just because it's still too early for things to start getting better, not a sign of what's to come. I feel as if the situation has taken on a life of its own. It's become even more unpredictable. A few nights ago, I received a frantic call from Milo. He was whispering, clearly terrified, and told me that Robert had lost control after discovering that Deborah had done something he didn't like. With Milo around, Robert went into one of his uncontrollable rages. He grabbed Deborah's phone and smashed it against the wall, screaming at the top of his lungs. When Selena tried to intervene, Robert unleashed his fury on her as well. And it wasn't just yelling, he became physical with her. I'm sorry if this isn't very graphic, but I don't know how much detail I can go into here. All I can say is that, as a father, hearing this from your own child because he witnessed it is incredibly hard. Milo told me that Robert's anger was something he'd never seen before. I told myself to hold on and immediately called the police, giving them Robert's address. I also called my lawyer, and he said that if I truly believed my son was in danger, I could break the restraining order because I had justification. That's why I went there. When I arrived at Robert's house, the police were already there. They were yelling for Robert to come out, but he wouldn't obey. We could hear the shouting from inside the house. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. I stood at the edge of the driveway when I heard a loud crash, something breaking inside, and then the front door flew open. Deborah was the first to come running out, her face streaming with tears, sobbing uncontrollably. She ran straight toward me, and before I could even react, she was apologizing. I just asked her where Milo was. Luckily, Milo and Selena followed right behind her, their faces pale. I ran to hug Milo while the paramedics attended to Deborah and Selena. Deborah didn't seem to have suffered too much, but Selena, unlike Deborah, whose tears covered her face, had blood running down hers. It was a small cut on her forehead near her eyelid, in a spot that bleeds a lot, so it was a grim sight. Meanwhile, the police were arresting Robert inside the house. They dragged him out in handcuffs, and believe me when I say he was furious with rage. He was yelling all kinds of things at all of us, making wild threats. I don't think even all the money in the world could help him this time. The police took statements from everyone, Deborah, Selena, and Milo, detailing months of various forms of abuse. Deborah admitted that Robert's manipulation and control began almost as soon as he moved in with them. He had isolated them, made them financially and emotionally dependent on him, and slowly destroyed their self-esteem. She confessed that everything she'd said in court about me, the supposed abuse and my anger issues, was a lie, spurred on by Robert and Selena, who were both trapped in their own distorted version of reality. My lawyer also showed up because I was breaking the restraining order, and he wanted to protect me in case they tried to detain me. It wasn't necessary in the end. Selena also broke down and apologized to me, perhaps from all the trauma, admitting that her desire for a better life had blinded her to Robert's true nature. She admitted she was wrong, not only for believing Robert's lies but also for dragging Deborah and Milo into it. After the police left and Robert was taken into custody, a new reality began to settle in. The restraining order against me was lifted immediately, and my lawyer is working to reopen the divorce case. Selena and Deborah might even face legal consequences for their false testimonies, which I think is only fair. I believe this will be the first taste of justice I've received. At the moment, Milo is living with me in my small apartment. It's cramped, far from the big house we used to have, but for now, being together is what matters most. I don't know where Selena and Deborah are now, but having my son here, safe, is all I care about. I've set up appointments for Milo to see a therapist, and if necessary, I will too. At this point, the family is completely broken, at least the part that includes Selena and Deborah, but I still have my little family of two, Milo and me. This is what I meant when I said I couldn't just go in and take my son. Everything that happened with Deborah and Selena could have fallen on Milo if I had tried to do it earlier, without police intervention. The very same police who didn't listen to my reports and let everything happen before stepping in. If I had done it when there wasn't enough evidence against Robert, and Milo returned to his house with him, I couldn't forgive myself if, instead of Selena, it was Milo who ended up bleeding or something worse. Update 3. The first and most important thing is that Robert has been formally charged with multiple counts of domestic abuse, coercive control, and criminal threats. It's a huge relief to know he's in custody, and the prosecutor has assured us that given the overwhelming evidence and our testimonies, it's very unlikely he'll be granted bail before his trial. That's good news. If you had seen him leave his house handcuffed that night, you'd know he's one of those people who is best kept behind bars for a long time. Robert's arrest caused a huge stir in the community, especially considering the image he had built of himself. No one suspected the real person behind the wealth and charm. But behind closed doors, he was a different man, one who thrived on control and fear. His trial is still a long way off, but I'm confident that justice will be served. Many of you asked about the next steps for Milo and for me, as well as for Deborah and Selena. Milo is still living with me. Selena and Deborah are staying with a friend of my ex-wife. She asked me to have Milo return to her, but I told her that after everything that's happened, I deserve to spend time with him. There wasn't any argument about it. It's just been a strange adjustment. You might call me insensitive for not forgiving my daughter, for not seeing that she was abused, first by Selena and then by Robert, to push her into what she did. But it wasn't like I had a weapon held to her head when she testified against me. The only thing she had going for her was the money and the life that her new stepfather could offer. Sometimes a parent has to let their child make a stupid decision so they learn that we weren't lying when we said it was a bad idea. Deborah made a very, very stupid choice, and now her punishment is that I can't see her the same way. To be honest, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. I can't say I'll never forgive her, but I can't promise that one day I will. Those are promises I know I won't be able to keep. On the legal front, my lawyer has been fantastic. Thanks to Deborah's retraction of her previous testimony and the new evidence of Robert's abusive behavior, we have been able to reopen the divorce case. The judge has indicated that the original decision, which was heavily biased against me due to the false accusations, will likely be overturned. This means I might regain some of what I lost: my financial stability, my home, and most importantly, my dignity. It's a strange feeling, to be honest. I never thought I'd get the chance to clear things up, and while it's bittersweet to realize how much damage was done, I'm grateful for this new opportunity. Many of you have expressed concern for Milo, and I want to thank you for that. Despite his young age, he's proving to be an incredibly strong kid. He's only 14, but he's handled this situation with a composure I never expected. I know a father shouldn't lean on his son, and it's usually the other way around in tough times, but Milo is my rock just by being here with me. You have no idea how much I missed him. I know that sooner or later he'll have to go back to his mother, unless I get full custody, which might be the case. But even if I don't, it makes me happy to think I'll be spending more time with him. There were also many questions about whether I've forgiven Selena, and the answer is more complicated than a simple no. I haven't forgiven her for the infidelity, that's clear. Nor have I forgiven the lies during the trial. But at least she has started to try to make amends by confessing part of what she did. I don't think there's an in-between when it comes to forgiveness. If I have to define my current feelings toward Selena, I'd say they're complicated. No, I'm not going back with her and I'm not planning on being friends with her, but at least she isn't making things any harder. She knows she could legally demand that Milo live with her now, but she hasn't. I suspect it's because she's afraid of my retaliation, but that isn't going to soften me one bit. I'm going to court to demand everything that's rightfully mine. The only difference her help would make is whether we end up having a disastrous relationship after the storm or at least something cordial. Update 4. Robert hasn't made me disappear, it's just that legal cases take time. I didn't want to come back empty-handed, so besides my lawyer asking me for a document, we had a hearing today where we talked a lot. To start, the divorce has been reversed, and with that, many of the things I lost have been restored. For example, the house, something that had been given to Selena as compensation for painting me as a monster. That is, the same house she sold when she went off to live with Robert. Not only has the decision to award her the entire house been overturned, but now the house is legally mine again. The only problem is that the house has already been sold. However, this was resolved by giving me the proceeds from the sale, plus a little extra because it was sold below market value in order to make a quick sale. Custody of Milo has also been revisited, and given Selena's history, I requested and obtained full custody of him. She will now have visitation rights instead. I know she didn't expect me to do this, which is why her attitude toward me has changed. But I said I'd go after everything I was owed, and that's exactly what I did. We're also suing Robert for his role in the divorce trial. With all this money coming in, we're now looking for a new house for Milo and me. The cramped little apartment is a thing of the past. We want a place with a separate bedroom for each of us, a game room, and even a huge yard where we can do sports. None of these new plans include Deborah. As you can see, I haven't mentioned her at all in this update. The reason is that she hasn't played any meaningful part in my life during this time. No, Milo isn't a golden child, as some have called him. It's just that Deborah has been a really terrible daughter to me, and I'm not going to wait around to get stabbed in the back when she finds someone she thinks will be a better father than I am. Both she and her mother have received fines for lying during the divorce trial, so legally, they've had to face some punishment. Socially, neither of them can go out without being recognized, first for their part in the Robert case, but also for lying during the divorce and what they put Milo through.